cities to run small motors. So whatever the streetcar voltage was, that's what the fans had to fit. So you find a lot of real early, some of these type motors, wild voltage. Mine in there, Moser Cabot is a 20 volt. Some of Jack's and fans were like 30 volts. I've seen them 500 volts and all kinds of weird things. Okay. Here we see a couple of fan men down in Canton. I know, where do you find these early things, right? A bunch of you have been wondering, how do you get those? Like Jack's over here and everything? Well, those are pretty rare. But here we are down in Canton. This is Jack. This is about, what, Jack? 5 years ago? 8 years ago? This is Gil Kasparik, who unfortunately couldn't get here. These are treasures they just found, 1898 Emerson's. Probably the most ornate desk fan ever made, with the possible exception of your Peerless, but it's the same type, real early, 1898. Okay. Here we are, looking at something that we've never seen before. Somebody told us this fan ran on gasoline or alcohol or kerosene or something. We thought, nah, I couldn't be. Here's Jack, looking at a kerosene fan, one of the first we saw about, what, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever. And I remember
Was that natural gas model?
Yes, it was. It had a natural gas jet burner in the bottom. We couldn't believe that thing. We thought this must be pre-electric. You know, well, later on, as you get the literature, you find out they're not pre-electric, and that's the value of literature. I'm glad Dan is going to be talking on that because it solves a lot of your problems in your organization of your collection. You know. Okay. Yeah, I remember this guy wanted $500, wasn't it? $500 from Jack, and I thought, no way. We wouldn't pay $500 for that thing, you know, for some last day on our okay. Can you hit the latch and I can see this a little better just for a second. You say, where do you find these things? Well, about 10 years ago, a student from Yale told me that he knew a place in Boston about 10 blocks from the campus where an old man had a 5-story building full of fans. I thought, well, that's fan heaven if I ever heard one. So about 5 years later, I was finally able to make enough in the fan business, which it takes you a long time to make any money in the fan business, Dan, some of them tell you, to go up here and see. So I went up here, and this is a shot of the interior of that guy's business. Now, when you find something like this, you are in heaven. And I mean, some of this stuff was early because Boston, you know, having streetcars, was a real early town, and I suggest that some of you looking for these treasures, go to some of these early towns like Philadelphia, Boston, New York City, some of these places that had early DC current a long time ago, and you will find this kind of stuff. I bought 24 fans that day. That was about all I could handle at the time, and I induced my wife to carry one back on the plane and me carry another, and we shipped the rest of it. Among that group was the Lollipop Oscillator you see in there, the DC, and a bunch of real rare stuff. Also, okay, there were some real early motors in there, and a couple of guys had been there before me and kind of showing off the real rare things of the collection. But anyway, these, of course, are the earliest type of what you could call desk fans. This is simply a spring wound or clock motor type desk fan. It's actually what we call a fly fan. This is the fanciest one I've ever seen. It's either nickel or silver plated, and I've never seen another one. I've been trying to buy this fan for about 6 years, and he's an antique dealer if she won't sell it to me. But this you're probably talking, well, I've got the patent in there, 1853. Okay, you can call this the earliest desk fan if you want to. Okay. This is, of course, an early type of desk fan that you've seen in the real thing over here, water powered. Dan said 1896. That's the date I use for these things. They're primitive, they're turbine, they're not electric, but they're very early. That's a good place for you to start. Everybody needs at least one water powered installation. There's the front of this fan. This fan was stolen out of my shop about 4 years ago. So if you ever see this fan, you know where it came from. It's very distinctive. It's a specialty company from Indianapolis. It was all original. It's a nickel-plated guard and so forth. I sure would like to help on finding it. I put some articles out on the front table that show this fan. It's a nice evolutionary fan article that Monty certainly contributed a lot to. They printed Delta flat magazines. So start your literature collection at this meeting. Start with that. Monty did some great work, and even some stuff from the GE archives was printed in that article. So you're welcome to the manuals that I've got.
So if we got it, don't run into a show, is that it?
Something like that. Okay, recall.
Help put the manual here, they'll go around.
Aha. This is what you like to find in the track. These, when we first started collecting, were not that valuable. They were rare. We couldn't hardly find any, but gosh, they've certainly appreciated in the last year. See something like this in some old lady's antique shop, just buy the stuff. Don't ask her what she wants. This is a complete floor model, Lake Breeze. I don't know, some of you probably never seen one. I hadn't until several years ago. It's supposed to have a glass chip in it. But this is an early type, but not as early as some of the electric. Okay? This is the most primitive type of electric desk fan. This is a very small fan. It was only about a 5-inch diameter blade. It's very similar to the ones you've seen earlier. You can see how primitive this thing is. Here's your H-style armature, very primitive. It's not even been wound yet. I think that these things were sold in kit form. You could buy them in the early days. You could build it yourself. Electricity was phenomenal. They didn't even understand it all. My Edison sign back there, it's hilarious. It said, electricity is in no way harmful to your sleep and all this stuff. I mean, people were experimenting with it. They didn't understand electricity. They didn't know if it would harm you at night and give off some gas or what. So this is a very early type. Most of them had a wooden base. They're mounted on wood base. This is about a 2 or 4 volt, like I was talking about earlier. Okay. Here's another one. Knapp was one of the first companies to make fans. I would say about 1891. I think the handout I'll give you tomorrow when I conclude this talk will give you all of the manufacturers I can dig up of this fans with the date of origin of the company when it's known. This was one of the earliest companies. If you have a copy of my book, you'll see them about 1891. Okay. Here's another one. I think. Did you say yours was Perfection?
No, Richmond. Perfection is by Richmond. It's a model. Perfection's a model by
Okay.
Richmond.
Richmond. Okay, this is a Richmond, if I'm not mistaken. The guy brought this to my shop about 8 years ago, and I was too dumb to buy it. He wanted $300 for it, I think it was, and I let it go. Okay.
I got it, and then Jack got it.
Okay. This is what I would say would be the first electric desk fan. As Dan pointed out earlier, they were clamp-on, okay, to the sewing machine table or whatever. They're basically, the motor you see there, inverted, except this was the first type made. This is Proctor Curtis. If you'll notice, each blade was stamped because they really thought they had some patents over here. So this is about the first type of electric desk fan, 1887. So I told you right after Dr. Wheeler began his experimental talks at the society. Okay. Here's the big one. If you got got a copy of Schofield, this is in Schofield. Nobody's ever found one of these, but that's the challenge for you new collectors out there. Somebody will probably find one of these one of these days. What Roger said on vein oscillators, what can you expect to be missing? Probably that. So all you're gonna find is this. So be ready for that. Don't pass something up that looks like that, but just happens not to have this.
Like that, I wouldn't pass it up to me.
As Roger said,
That's right.
the most vulnerable part of this fan is the vein. So the first thing people did was tear the vein off and throw that away.
Roger says the blade will be missing too.
Okay. Okay. All right. Here we get Dr. Wheeler. He evidently branched off from Crocker Curtis, or either got promoted or something, and they were one of the first manufacturers of desk fans. This is a Crocker Wheeler. I have a much later Crocker Wheeler in the museum. Are any of yours Crocker Wheeler, Jack?
Wait,
Any of your battery fans Crocker Wheeler?
no, I think Dan's got part of the proper.
It's up there.
Okay. Look at that one right up there. His has claw feet, right?
No, it's the one without the claw feet. It's the, it's
Okay,
the,
sewing machine type, the one I just showed.
well, the big 1/6 horsepower.
Okay.
Regular drive motor.
This is certainly something that every